Good evening and welcome to the Coon Rapids City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. If you could please join us and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Gryskowiak.
Here.
Councilmember Rayrauer.
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez Jr.
Here.
Councilmember Geisler.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here. Thank you. Let's adopt this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Geisler and a second by Johnson to adopt this evening's agenda. Is there any corrections or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. And we are right up to one of our favorite things, oath of office for firefighter. And we'd like to turn this over to Chief Piper.
Mayor, council, citizens, staff. As fire chief, I would like to take the opportunity this evening to introduce you to our newest career firefighter. The fire department takes great pride in the service we provide to the citizens of Coon Rapids. Our mission statement states, the mission of the Coon Rapids Fire Department is to provide efficient services designed to protect lives and property from the adverse effects of fires, medical emergencies, or exposure to dangerous conditions. We pursue this mission with determination and resolve, with emphasis on dedication, compassion, and constant improvement. To accomplish this mission, we need trained, dedicated, and compassionate personnel. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Jason Harbinson. Jason grew up in Coon Rapids and graduated from Coon Rapids High School in 2009. After high school, he attended Hennepin Technical College, where he obtained an AAS degree in fire science. Jason's family consists of his wife Liz, daughter Harper, and parents Joyce and Dan. Jason has been a paid-on-call firefighter for Coon Rapids since 2011. Jason, you have been chosen and trained to be a firefighter for this organization. In addition to responding to emergencies, your duties are many. As firefighter, you are responsible to maintain your knowledge, skills, and physical abilities. You are responsible to provide quality service to our customers. It will be your duty to respond whenever called. Your chiefs, your crew, and the community rely on your abilities and professionalism in the performance of your role as firefighter. I know you'll provide many years of excellent service to our city, the community you've always called home. That said, we will now have the formal pinning of Jason's badge, number 84, followed by him swearing an oath of office performed by Mayor Jerry Cook. So I'd like to introduce you to Jason's wife, Liz, right here, as the person he has selected to pin his badge.
They'll just be getting a handshake from me, I'll tell you that right now. So I actually have to say, I was actually surprised when I saw that we were swearing Jason in tonight. I thought you were already a firefighter. You just chaired our Fireman's Carnival, which is one of our biggest events of the year, and I thought, well, I must have just missed it. He must have just been already sworn in. All right, are you ready? Here we go. Raise your right hand, sir. I can hold it.
Okay.
I, Jason Harbinson,
I, Jason Harbinson,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support the policies and procedures
I will support the policies and procedures
of the Coon Rapids Fire Department.
of the Coon Rapids Fire Department.
I will faithfully,
honorably, and to the best of my ability,
protect the safety and lives
of
my fellow firefighters and citizens whose care has been entrusted to me. Nicely done. Congratulations. we go. Okay. I'll take it. That's right. Okay.
Thank you. That's great. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Congratulations, Jason. And that brings us to our second favorite thing. I mean, not item 2 on the agenda. Let me rephrase that. Let me start over, Chief. Item 2 on the agenda, our other favorite thing. There we go. That's what I meant to say. Steve, you just edit that out, okay, when you put that meeting out? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to celebrate the graduation from field training and to introduce 3 of our newest officers to you and the community. Kelly St. Martin, Alexander Barrett, and Justin Denwoody. Each of these officers has spent the last 4 months learning the Coon Rapids way, derived from a foundation of high ethical standards and a focus on community. I'm looking forward to watching them grow. Officers, in a few moments, you'll be officially sworn in and pinned with your numbered badge. This badge right here. I want you to take a long, hard look at this badge. Can you see, Alex? Yes. And think about its symbolism. This badge belongs to the citizens of Coon Rapids. It embodies their level of trust, respect, and support of you and our police department. By accepting this badge, you are entering into a social contract with the public in which you agree to take on the responsibility of always acting in their best interest while serving and protecting. I implore you to remember that while wearing this badge and never betray the trust and respect that our community has bestowed upon you. Kelly St. Martin, first up, grew up in Brooklyn Park. She graduated from Totino Grace High School. She then attended the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, where she received a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. In June of 2013, she was hired by the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office as a correctional officer and assigned to the Ramsey County Jail, where she worked her way up to supervisory duties until March of 2020, when she was hired as a licensed deputy and assigned full-time to Regions Hospital in St. Paul. Kelly and her husband Jacob, along with their children Patrick and Madison, moved to Coon Rapids last year and instantly loved it here. That's a quote from her. During her hiring interview, she was passionate about wanting to serve her community and make a difference, which she had never been provided the opportunity to do at her former agency. Kelly, you're going to get the opportunity to do that now. Welcome to the family, Officer Kelly St. Martin, badge number 184. Please come forward to be pinned and sworn in, and Kelly's husband, Jacob, will be doing the honors. Step up.
Chief would have been happy to take her. Hi, Kelly. You already got the right hand up. Perfect. This is awesome. I, Kelly St. Martin, let me start over. How's that? Okay. I, Kelly St. Martin, do solemnly swear
I, Kelly St. Martin, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
There we go. And discharge faithfully
and discharge
the
faithfully
duties of a police officer for the city of Coon Rapids
the duties of a police officer for the city of Coon Rapids
in the county of Anoka
and the county of
in
Anoka
the state of Minnesota
and the state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Alex Barrett was born here in Coon Rapids and grew up in the Clearwater Big Lake area. He graduated from Big Lake High School and then enlisted and spent 4 years serving his country in the Marines. He was honorably discharged in 2017 at the rank of sergeant. Alex attended North Hennepin Community College, where he received an associate's degree in law enforcement. In May of 2019, Alex was hired as a community service officer with the Columbia Heights Police Department. He worked in that capacity until April of 2020 when he was hired there as a police officer. Alex worked in Columbia Heights for 2 years, serving the citizens there until being hired here. When asked why he wanted to work for Coon Rapids, Alex said, because it's a bigger agency with more opportunities, and we promote officers to serve their community in a meaningful way and a positive work environment. Alex and his wife Christy live in Stacy, and his grandfather Boyd Barrett is a retired patrol sergeant from the Crystal Police Department. Welcome to the family, Officer Alex Barrett, badge number 185. Please come forward to be pinned and sworn in. Alex's wife Christy will be doing the honors.
I, Alexander Barrett, do solemnly swear
I, Alexander Barrett, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and discharge faithfully
and discharge faithfully
the duties of a police officer for the city of Coon Rapids,
the duties of a police officer for the City of Coon Rapids,
in the county of Anoka
County of Anoka,
and state of Minnesota,
State of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and abilities.
That's good. Thank you.
Last but not least, Justin Denwitty grew up in the Oakdale Woodbury areas, where he still resides today. He graduated from Tartan High School and attended Century Community College, where he received his associate's degree in law enforcement. In June of 2019, Justin was hired as a hospital security officer for Minnesota Health Fairview at the University of Minnesota Medical Center in Minneapolis. He was employed there for approximately 3 years prior to being hired here, and he also volunteers as a mentor with Rebound Incorporated in Minneapolis, where they focus on education, advocacy, and rehabilitation for youth in need. You'll notice that Justin has a radiant, infectious smile that consumes every room he enters, and I know that it has a positive effect on every public interaction he's involved in. Welcome to the family, Officer Justin Denwitty, badge number 187. Please come forward to be pinned and sworn in. Justin's mother, Carrie Armelin, will be doing the honors.
Hey, Justin. Good to see you. All right. You ready?
Yep.
I, Justin Denwitty,
I, Justin Denwitty,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and discharge faithfully
and discharge faithfully
the duties of a police officer for the city of Coon Rapids,
the duties of a police officer for the City of Coon Rapids
in the county of Anoka
and the County of Anoka
and state of Minnesota,
and State of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
concludes our swearing-in ceremony. Friends and family are welcome to join us out in the hallway for some photo opportunities. Thank you for being here tonight.
Or they're welcome to hang around for the rest of the council.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Well, that thinned her right down. That was fun. All right, we are on to item 3, which is the approval of the minutes of the August 16th, 2022 meeting.
I'll move approval.
Motion by Johnson, second by Hernandez Jr. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed? And that motion carries. One abstention, Councilmember Carlson. All right, we have several items on our consent agenda this evening, items 4 through 10. The first one is to approve a new Cingular wireless AT&T lease amendment at Wintercrest Monopole. The city and New Cingular Wireless, which is AT&T, entered into a lease agreement on February 10th, 2020 to allow AT&T to lease space on the Wintercrest Park Monopole for telecommunication purposes. AT&T is in the process of refurbishing its directional antennas on the water tower. In that process, AT&T desires the ability to place 12 directional antennas on the water tower. Currently, the lease allows for 6. The city staff does not object to the additional antennas as long as they meet all requirements under the current lease and city ordinances. And as consideration for the added antenna, AT&T will pay the city an additional $12,000 in rent per year. Under the current lease, AT&T's rent in 2022 is $34,611.20. So we're looking to authorize approval and execution of the first amendment to the lease agreement with New Cingular Wireless PCS LLC. Next item on our consent agenda, which is item 5, is to accept right of entry agreement with Shade Tree Construction Incorporated. These are for the Robinson Townhomes. The project consists of 14 townhome lots and a 15th lot that makes up the association common interest space. And the right of entry agreement will allow the city to enter the association common interest space to maintain the water main system for public safety purposes, including hydrant flushing twice per year and exercising of the gate valves. The water main system within the site is considered private, and the association will continue to own and maintain it. The right of entry agreement simply provides the city with the ability to ensure appropriate public safety. So we're looking to accept the attached right of entry agreement with Shade Tree Construction Incorporated for the development of the Robinson Townhomes. Item 6 is to approve final payment to Northern Lines Contracting for projects 19-12A and 19-12B, Port Riverwalk Infrastructure Phase 1 and 2. The overall final cost for the first edition was an additional $39,150.25, more than the original contract amount. And the overall final cost for the second edition project was $49,811.06, less than the original contract amount. So let's see. This results in a final payment amount due to the contractor of $103,085.75. And we're looking to approve the change orders and final payment to Northern Lines Contracting in the amount of $103,085.75 for projects 19-12A and 19-12B, Port Riverwalk First and Second Edition infrastructure projects. And there was a lot more figures than the two that I gave. Obviously, though, when they didn't come to that amount. Item 7 is to adopt Resolution 22-87, accepting grant funds from Coon Creek Watershed District and approve the water quality cost share agreement. City staff submitted a water quality cost share program grant application to the Coon Creek Watershed District to purchase a point scale indicator and calibration kit. The kit allows staff to measure the exact amount of de-icing material applied to roadways during winter snow removal operations, ensuring efficient maintenance while using less salt. The system is intended to reduce the effects of chloride loading on water bodies by providing real data on how much material is being used per lane mile, and to verify application rates. The city was awarded up to $2,035 of the purchase cost, which would be 50%. And the Coon Creek Watershed District agrees to disperse 80% of the approved cost share amounts once the attached agreement is executed, and will disperse any additional remaining funds upon proof of completion. And sufficient funds have been included in the 2022 snow removal maintenance services to cover the city's portion of the purchase. So we're looking to adopt Resolution 22-87, accepting grant funds from the Coon Creek Watershed District and authorize execution of the Water Quality Cost Share Agreement. We're on to item 8, which is to approve a master consulting agreement with American Engineering Testing Incorporated. American Engineering Testing is a local company with staff who have previously completed engineering and other technical services for the city, and the staff would like to add American Engineering Testing into the geotechnical service pool. So we are looking to add American Engineering Testing Incorporated to the city's consultant pool and authorize appropriate staff to execute such agreement. Item 9 is to authorize final payment to Elevation Coating LLC for Project 21-11 East Reservoir Rehabilitation. During construction, several leaks were discovered on the existing geodesic dome roof. A change order was required to expose, clean, and reseal all 313 roof connection hubs. So we're looking to approve the change order and final payment to Elevation Coating LLC in the amount of $14,700 for Project 21-11 East Reservoir Rehabilitation. And then item 10, and the final item on our consent agenda, is to approve a memorandum of understanding with Anoka Hennepin District 11 for police department support. This agreement provides funding for assigning police officers as school liaison officers at Coon Rapids High School, Anoka Hennepin Regional High School, Coon Rapids Middle School, Northdale Middle School, and River Trail Learning Center, and for officers teaching the Drug Abuse Resistance Education, DARE, program in the elementary schools. And as a point of interest, the police department has operated the school liaison program since 1974, and since 1989, the police department has instructed the nationally recognized DARE program in all elementary schools in Coon Rapids. So we're looking to approve the 2022-2023 Memorandum of Understanding for School Liaison and Prevention Program Officer Services with Anoka Hennepin School District Number 11.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Rayrauer.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Rayrauer and a second by Carlson. Is there any discussion or questions from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac.
I've got a couple of questions on consent agenda 7, the resolution 2287, accepting the grant funds from the Coon Creek Watershed District. First, I'd just like to point out, I'm glad we submitted to get these grant funds. I mean, that's awesome. But a couple of questions. One is, don't our trucks already have equipment that measures the salt and chemical that go onto the roadways in the wintertime? So that's a question maybe for Tim.
Yes, Councilmember Griscoviac, Council, we do have devices, spinners that put it out, but you're basically, you put the weight of the salt going in, and then you measure it when you're back, so you're really only going what's the delta from the time you leave until the time you get back, as opposed to knowing what's going down at any particular time on any street. That's the difference with this piece of equipment.
Gotcha. And then the other question I had on that is, can we use this one piece of equipment to calibrate all of our trucks, or do we need one of these for each unit going forward?
No, this is just for one time for all vehicles,
Okay.
for all trucks.
Sounds good. Those are my questions.
All right. Any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the consent agenda is approved and adopted. We're up to bid openings and contract awards. Item number 11 is to consider a contract for water tower design services, project 22-17. Mr. Himmer, you want to hit this, or you want me to talk about your discussion points? Or what
Sure,
would you
Mr.
like me to
Mayor,
do?
Council, I can touch on it briefly. It's been a couple years in the making. We're finally here to consider the award of the design services. As I mentioned in the memo, there are a few things included in this. In addition to the design of the new tower and construction services on that, they'll also be developing final set of plans for the decommissioning of the existing Foley Tower and the demo, and a monopole to be constructed in its place, as well as doing a subdivision on the existing property where the new tower is going to go. That'll leave remnant property for the HRA to market. So there's a lot of work to be done. This is going to go over the span of probably 2, close to 3 years. And when we get to the point of tower construction well underway, we'll come back with a different scope of services to look to do the construction work on the monopole and the decom. But we got to get the new tower up first. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
The book they provided was very interesting, looking through at the various water towers, especially the one in Madison, the dual zone reservoirs. Like, what? I'm assuming we don't need anything fancy like that.
No, Mr. Mayor.
How will they determine, will it be part of the process, will they determine whether we do a single pedestal or one of these composite elevated water towers? Is that part of the process?
Yeah,
or-
Mr. Mayor, Council, we're going to design and bid both, and then we'll provide a life cycle analysis for you to decide which one. The composite as a concrete base, so you're going to spend more on the soils component and the foundation, but theoretically there's less to maintain long-term, less to paint, unless you get some spalling or some rust coming through the rebar, then you end up having to paint it. So there's pros and cons of each. We want to make sure we get the best product, so we're going to do both, and then you'll ultimately get to decide when we get to that point.
Excellent. Seems like most of these folks for the last several years have gone with a composite. But- All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councilmember
I will
Geisler.
make a motion to approve the attached proposal from SEH and authorize the execution of a letter of engagement for engineering and design services for a new water tower, project 22-17.
Second.
Motion by Geisler and second by Johnson. Is there further discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Hernandez Jr.?
Mr. Himmer, have we worked, are we familiar with SEH regards to water towers in the past?
Yes, Councilmember Hernandez Jr., SEH does a lot of utility work for us currently. I haven't worked with them personally on a tower, nor has one been built in my time here in Coon Rapids, but
Okay.
they've done risk management plans for us. They do our well rehab on an annual basis. They're well familiar with what we have out there. They've got a really good team. It's all in-house. As a matter of fact, one of our site inspectors will be our former utility superintendent who went to work for them.
Okay.
So they got a good team, they got a good price, and I would recommend we award to SEH.
Okay, so they're well recommended for the build for this?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Kraskowiak?
guys probably know where I'm going to go with this. I've been kind of vocal on this over the last few years. But let me say this, I mean, I'm a big proponent of making sure that our infrastructure is up to date, especially water and sewer and everything like that. But with this project, I really would like us to think about it a little bit more. It seems like we are biting off a lot of things right now and maybe stretching ourselves too thin a little bit. We've got the fire station, we've got the 610 interchange, we've got a lot of infrastructure projects going on over in Coon Rapids with new water and sewer mains under the roads over there, all big projects. And to me, this one, I'm not sure if we need to do this right now. I know that part of this bidding process didn't really include a needs assessment. I know we've talked about it over the last few years. But cities typically don't tear down water towers and then build new ones. I mean, unless we're growing and they need more capacity. We don't have a capacity problem, And we don't really have a water pressure problem in the city. So I'm thinking that at $4.5 million for this project, and that doesn't include building a new monopole to put those antennas up, I'm just thinking we could save ourselves in the neighborhood between $3 and $4 million if we renovated our existing water tower and kept that in place for the antennas. And so I wanted to throw that out there.
Councilmember Geisler?
That's right. And I'll defer to Mr. Hemmer if I say anything incorrectly. Right, so one of the things that I understand is that the Foley Water Tower, the height of the towers to maintain the correct pressures means that we cannot fully utilize that tower. There's also issues with that tower that we would have to put significant money into it if we were going to delay and maintain. So for me, putting $1 million into an aging water tower that is already has a design issue that we can't fill it without causing issues around the city is money thrown away versus spending money to fix the infrastructure to what we need. This tower would be put closer to our industrial area, which is a higher water use, which would be beneficial for the pressures and our police. My understanding is that our current capacity does not meet the requirements. So if there was a large fire event, we may not be able to pump all of the water that we need to do.
I would like that confirmed.
You know, and so there are enough issues when we look at what is the capacity and that projection of what we need. Right now, the current volume, I don't think meets our capacity. And so this is not just tearing down an old water tower and replacing it with something because we want a new water tower. It's functionally needed to maintain the integrity of the water system for the city.
Mr. Hemmer, anything?
So where did I go wrong?
Well, I think there's a few things, but I'll let Mr. Hemmer comment.
Mr. Mayor, Council, currently, yes, the existing tower can only be filled about halfway full. So we don't have the full capacity of that. To try to renovate or fix that, you would have to basically pick the thing up, cut off the legs, lower it. Plus there's roof issues on it. There's estimated about $1 million worth of work that needs to happen to the existing tower structurally, as well as it needs to be repainted. So the idea was we'll put that into a new tower. Currently, do we have today a storage capacity for fire flow? During the peak period, there would be. There is a slight deficiency during the peak periods when everyone gets home from work, they're all washing their clothes, they're all doing their laundry, all of those types of things. So there is a slight deficiency. If the existing tower was full, that would probably be acceptable today, but this is also for 40 years into the future, assuming a population of 75,000 people. So this, if this meets our ultimate growth, this could be the only tower and the last tower that would have to be constructed. And we did do an analysis, I'm happy to share that with you, Councilmember Griscoviac, as to where our deficiencies are. And you are correct, Councilmember Geisler, in that it does help us where you're putting the tower closest to the highest demands and the needs. It's gonna cause less pumping needs. Pressure-wise, it's gonna maintain an existing one pressure zone system throughout the whole city. So it's gonna improve the system. I think it's probably going to be a little more expensive than trying to rehab the existing tower, but it also projects then for future growth and doesn't just address what our immediate needs are today. So I can answer any other questions beyond that.
So as a follow-up, the half capacity at our Foley Tower, I understand that. It only can be half capacity because either the other one was built too high or this one was built too low, or one of the two, and it equals out. I understand that. But in all the discussions that I've had in workshops over the last few years, I've never been shown a net capacity in terms of storage capacity in the city. In fact, I think at the last work session, or actually it was at the budget session that we talked about this, Mr. Hemmer mentioned that even when we took water treatment centers offline, 10 million gallons of storage capacity offline as we did that, we didn't run out. We didn't have a deficiency. So, again, still a concern of mine. I think that we could get by with this tower if we renovated it, painted it, kept it there. So was I off on the comments about our water storage capacity, that it's sufficient and always has been? And the other thing is, we would build this in an area, Coon Rapids, as you know, all of us pretty much know, we're pretty much built out. Sure, there's some industrial capacity in the southern part of the city that, you know, might be served with what would definitely need more water. But again, it seems we have the capacity. And, you know, going to the budget, which we're going to talk a little bit later, again, I'd like to see this spread out a little bit more and not biting off so much at once.
Okay. Mr. Himmer, so is the projection of this, are they laying this out based on a future population of 75,000? Is that what they're using the numbers on this?
They're using our 2040 comprehensive plan.
Oh. So I'm really not sure where we're ever going to put that many people. They don't have too many places left.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Rehauer?
Understanding what both council members have said, I very much appreciate long-term planning that's done. So they've been looking at this since 2014. The comprehensive water system plan identified the need for another water tower. I feel like it has been thought about for quite a while, and we never want to get to a place where we need it right now. And I support the fact that we're planning way in advance for the future, and it should save us money because that existing water tower is going to take $1 million to renovate, so it feels like that money would be lost if we then had to replace it in, say, 5 years or even 10 years. So I am in support of the new water tower.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Skoviak?
Maintenance on water towers is a given. I mean, we just did it, even on the one that we've only had for 20 years. We had to put in hundreds of $1,000s into maintaining that. It's just something that communities do. They maintain their water towers. And again, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to be the lone vote on this, it seems. But I'd like us to all think about it, because we're talking about the budget as well, and some decisions that we have to make on that. And, we could easily add the extra fire and police that we do. Those are resources that we know we need. And I think they take a little bit more precedent over the existing water system, which is, in all intents and purposes, is serving us still today, and would if we renovated this tower, threw $1 million into it, saving $3 million.
Mr. Hammer?
I was just going to mention that this is water fund dollars and not part of general fund or other expenditures. So this is paid for by the rates and not property taxes.
Mr. Stemwell?
Mayor, Council, I'll just add to that a couple of things. To the point of how we would finance the water tower, we do anticipate using a good portion of fund balance, primarily driven through recent federal stimulus programs over the last couple of years that we created some fund balance from, in sort of the anticipation of not creating too much debt load, especially after a 2022 year where we had the unique project for the fire station to fund. And really aiming for that less than $10 million, which would be a more typical year for the city. That would include the debt needed for the water tower. The other funding would come from the fund balance that I mentioned, and then obviously going forward, the rate structure would have to be right-sized to future water infrastructure needs. The point about the rehabilitation of the current water tower, I think it should be emphasized too, that the structural components are $1 million. The paint job, I think, probably ranges from anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, depending on the water tower you're talking about. And maybe those are old numbers. So really, I think as you're looking at that sort of juxtaposition of which is better, it might be 50% to 75% more expensive to build the new one and sort of have the future capacity, have the improved infrastructure for, yes, maybe twice the cost. And so those are the conversations we've been sort of going through over the last 7 or 8 years after the water study was completed. There was a recommendation to move more quickly back then, and we sort of have deferred this, knowing that it's a big decision. There's other infrastructure needs to consider as a part of it. But ultimately, as Mr. Hemming and I have talked about the existing water tower on Foley, it's that it's getting to the point where unless we make a decision soon, we could have a significant issue in there. I don't certainly want that to happen. One of the essential services we provide is water, and the second that goes out, it's going to be a big deal. And it's not to the point where that's a concern, but these things take time. When I hear about the roof of it is getting to be the point where, there's concern about the weight loads and things like that, then, it's my recommendation at that point that we have to act on it. And so that's why this is before you now.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Johnson?
So I've been on the council for 8 years, and this has been a topic of conversation for all of those 8 years. And what I think the public is hearing from the conversation up here is that everybody on this council is quite aware of and cares a lot about how much things cost in the city, how much local government costs, and how much it's going to cost either in the tax base or in the water rates or whatever. I appreciate the context that Mr. Semwell gave, because I would even take it maybe even a step farther. Probably, along with public safety, the one critical service that a city provides to its citizens, the most critical service, is actually water. And we've seen issues with that in some of our surrounding cities even recently. And it's caused great consternation where people have had to boil water or people have had their water service shut off. And it has actually been Coon Rapids that has turned the water on for them. When you think about, we sometimes, I think in the land of 10,000 lakes, we take it for granted that water is just something that is easy for us to get, and good, clean water that you can drink or brush your teeth or take a shower in is easy to get. But the moment, a roof fails in a water tower, we have a catastrophe that is going to be epic. And I don't say that to be kind of fear-mongering about this. I just say that to put it in context that what we're trying to do is, for the public to understand, is be very responsible with our water resource that we have, because it's so important. And because there are gives and takes, there's pros and cons on these approaches. I do support the building of a new water tower for the city of Coon Rapids. The water tower that is at the end of its effective life and has been for 8 years, or has been identified for actually longer than 8 years, almost 9 years, is in my ward. And frankly, I have been paying attention to this issue for all that time. And we have kicked the proverbial can down the road to this point, and I'm just not comfortable kicking it anymore. So I'm going to vote in support of this. But I'm also guided a little bit by just the experience of having sat through things with, my former colleague, Steve Wells, who used to sit to my left over here where Pat Carlson sits. And I remember our conversations about smaller projects and saying, well, we don't need it this year. Let's kick it to the next year and bid it out the next year. And then we get a little bit of sticker shock for how much it costs us in the next year. Because this is part of a plan and it's going to take us some time, I encourage us to think about moving that plan forward, because it's going to be an expensive thing, but if we don't get it rolling now and we do what we did with the pavilion or whatever at Sand Creek, we're going to be looking at even a bigger number down the road, and it's going to be a harder number to swallow than I think. And so, those are the things that we're thinking about and the things that are in the balance. But because it's such a critical service and piece of infrastructure, and because we need it, and because we're frankly at some recognizable risk, I think we should move forward with it. So that's where my vote's going to be. Thank you.
I appreciate Councilmember Kraskowiak making us pump the brakes and look at this again.
Yep.
And I get it. I mean, we had a 10 million gallon reservoir out of service, and we still had water capacity. I think this is no, we didn't have water capacity?
We had we have 2 tanks totaling 10.5 million gallons.
Oh, so-
One of them, I believe it was 4 million, 7.5 on one and 3 on the other. So we didn't have a full 10.5 million gallons
Okay,
out of,
right.
out
But
of.
3 million, whatever it was. But then this water tower, correct me, it's a 500,000 gallon water tower that we can only use half of, correct?
Correct.
So we're only talking 250,000 gallons here. So all those numbers kind of make sense to me that we really have the capacity. However, we've been working on this water tower for a very long time. We know the Foley one isn't any good. We can't use it at capacity. It needs a lot of maintenance. Mr. Himmer has told us about the advantage of having all of the extra capacity up high, that elevated water supply, to have that natural pressure. And I guess I'm going to go out and just say that I trust the system, and I trust the fact that we've been shopping this water tower for, 8-10 years now. And I guess I think we should keep it going, personally. So I'll be supporting it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
just
Griscoviac.
a couple of quick things here. On the capacity thing, 2 things. Do we need the capacity that we have today? My understanding is that the city of Coon Rapids, residents, everyone's using less water. The consumption is down to the point where we're going to have to raise water rates just to pay for the existing infrastructure. That doesn't even talk about a new thing. I mean, do we need that? I mean, efficiency's coming along, where people are using less water. Should we be part of that bandwagon, maybe on that a little bit? Yeah. I had some other points. I guess I just, my other point was that, no, it's not general fund money. That's correct. It does come out of the water utility fund. But again, going back to that water utility fund, if we've got money in that water utility fund, we've been putting money in the water utility fund to maintain this equipment. I say we use the money in the water utility fund to maintain the equipment. Towers last a long time. I mean, you go across this country and you see water towers from the early 1900s, and they're still providing water to their constituents. It's the first time I've ever heard that there was a roof issue on this. I don't know really how bad that is. That would be, to Councilmember Johnson's point, catastrophic if we lost our roof on that, but I hadn't heard that before. So again, just all these things that I wanted to weigh in front of the council in an open meeting, and so I'm glad I was able to do that.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
And that motion carries. One nay.
No vote.
Nay.
One no vote. Thank you, Councilmember Griscoviac. I don't get to practice that very
It
much.
doesn't happen much.
All right, we are up to item 12. Under new business, consider a letter of engagement for project 22-11 miscellaneous storm sewer repairs. Mr. Hammer, do you want me to just read about this? This is a pretty simple one.
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
We have
feel free.
2 existing 48-inch diameter reinforced concrete pipe culverts located below 103rd Lane at the Riverview Ditch Crossing are currently in poor condition and in need of replacement. This work was identified through routine inspections by Public Works personnel, and the culvert pipes were budgeted for replacement in 2022. So we're looking to approve the proposal of $109,600 from Dave Perkins Contracting Incorporated, who has provided services for several similar past projects in the city, and the repairs will be completed under the conditions of their master contracting agreement. If approved, the work is planned to take place between late September and mid-October 2022. Is there any questions for Mr. Hammer on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Carlson?
make a motion, we authorize a letter of engagement with Dave Perkins Contracting Incorporated for project 22-11 miscellaneous storm sewer repairs.
Second.
Motion by Carlson and a second by Hernandez Jr. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 13 is to consider a renewal agreement with the City of Fridley for criminal prosecution services. Mr. Brody, do you want to hit the highlights?
I can, Mayor, council members, this is as you may recall, we entered into an agreement with Fridley. It was kind of a unique agreement 5 years ago where we partnered with them to provide them prosecution services. We spent quite a bit of time beforehand trying to figure out whether that would work. And now we have proof after 5 years that it does work. And we also spent a lot of time analyzing sort of the financial component of it this time around when we had real numbers to look at, real, cases, salaries, things like that. We found we did a pretty good job in the first 5 years, and so we feel comfortable with an additional 5 years, because obviously we don't want this to cost our residents anything, and we don't want to decrease services to the city. So it's really been a beneficial agreement. They're as excited as we are as a staff to continue that agreement for another 5 years. So that's what's before you today, and we, like I said, would like to continue to be their city prosecutor, and they'd like us to do just that. Stand for any questions.
All right. Any
Mr.
questions?
Mayor?
Councilmember Geisler?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement for criminal prosecution services between City of Fridley and the City of Coon Rapids, and authorizing the mayor and city manager to execute the agreement.
Second.
Motion by Geisler and a second by Rehabilitation. Is there any further discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Geisler?
I just want to say I think it's a very unique and creative solution that we came up with and partnering with Fridley, and I commend our team for the work that they've done, and it's everything that I hear, it's been a success.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Johnson?
If I could just dovetail off of that a little bit, I really want to commend you, Mr. Brody, and also the other members of the city attorney's office, the attorneys and the staff and the people that we have working with victims on cases. I have actually heard from Fridley officers how pleased they are about the service that's being given to them by the Coon Rapids City Attorney's Office in the criminal prosecutions, and the attention that they get and their interaction with your staff. And so to commend you on that. Also have heard the same from judges. And frankly, I think what we had hoped to have happened back in 2018 is that this would be a net positive for our criminal justice system here in Anoka County, and I think it has been. I think you've also been leaders in the conversation about policy issues and that kind of reservoir of experience that the Coon Rapids City Attorney's Office has been really important. In particular, I've heard that us handling and staffing bail calendars and actually making bail arguments in cases has been an important thing in the county, and it helps uphold public safety in just so many respects. So thank you for this. I see that you have built into this the notion that the market goes up over time. And so I've read through the agreement. I think it's a good agreement. It covers all the bases, and I'm happy to support it.
All right. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Yes, thank you, Mr. Brody. Item 14 is to consider Resolution 22-88 establishing, I'm sorry, is that the right one? Yeah, oh, it is, okay. Establishing the 2022-2023 Coon Rapids Ice Center rental rates and approve the fee structure. Ms. Ring.
Good evening, Mayor Cook and Council. As you mentioned, this would be the fee structure for the 2022-2023 season, and this is very common to what we have done in years past, but there's just a few things I wanted to point out tonight. Per our market research, we feel that increasing by $10 an hour for the prime ice rate is very valid. It puts us very market competitive, and there was a market study in your packet. The other rates for non-prime winter, spring, summer, and outdoor ice, $5 an hour of an increase seems reasonable after that market study. And so that is one element that we researched for these rates. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that we created some additional policy that basically lays out more structure for how we're operating, but really puts it on paper and defines different language for what is a contract customer, what is a rental agreement customer. There's volume ice rates, game fees, ancillary facility space, and storage space. Some of our contract users have different services. So we really unified all of the sort of baseline operations and put all things on paper in new policy language. And then there's other services we have, such as public skate, stick and puck, skate sharpening. None of that increased because there were some modest adjustments last year. So if you decide to proceed with these rates tonight, there is another memo, council memo after this, where the contracts have been prepared and those rates have been included in those contracts. If you have any questions, let me know.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Ring?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Rayrauer?
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 22-88, establishing the 2022 to 2023 ice rental rates for the Coon Rapids Ice Center and approve the 2022 to 2023 Coon Rapids Ice Center fee structure.
Second.
Motion by Rayrauer and a second by Carlson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 15 is now that we have those new rates, to consider approval of the 2022-2023 Ice Center user contracts.
Yes, Mayor and Council. As I mentioned, we have several user groups that fall under our contract customers. And then we, of course, have many other users that kind of fall under a rental agreement. They don't purchase quite as much ice time. So our main users that you see the contracts before you are the Anoka Hennepin School District, Coon Rapids Youth Hockey, the Blue Ox, Power Edge, and then sled hockey. And we broke the contracts out a little bit differently this year to reflect that policy kind of detail and operating principles. So there's basically ice rates, locker room, and storage contracts, if applicable, per the user group. And so we just really spent a lot of time analyzing all of these users and getting all the contracts defined, and that's what's before you today. It looks like a long list, but it's actually our primary user groups, which basically are 3. And then we have other groups such as sled hockey that they have a little bit of storage that we have a contract for that.
All right. Any questions or?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Rayrauer?
I make a motion to approve the proposed 2022-2023 Coon Rapids Ice Center annual user contracts with Anoka Hennepin Independent School District Number 11, Coon Rapids Youth Hockey Association, the Minnesota Blue Ox, Minnesota Sled Hockey Association, and Power Edge, and authorize city officials to execute accordingly.
Second.
Motion by Rayrauer and a second by Geisler. Is there discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Kraskowiak?
a question for Mr. Ring. On, with all these contracts that we have, how does that stack up in terms of hourly capacity that we have at the ice center versus how much is getting used? Are we at capacity? Do we have room to grow? Do we have to, you know what I'm saying, get other ice time?
So we're very much at capacity for prime ice time. Non-prime ice, we are filling nicely with the Blue Ox. They practice during the day. There's a little bit of room there for the non-prime, and then of course during the less popular season, which is the summer, but there's different camps and different activities that do occur. So we're always looking for those new business opportunities to fill that ice time, but these are the primary larger users, the contracts you see before you.
Do we have any issue with time for the Coon Rapids Youth Hockey?
Mr. Stemwell?
Mayor and Council, on that note, we do, are still a part of the original Super Rink agreement in Blaine. The Coon Rapids Youth Hockey Club uses approximately 325 to 350 hours of ice time under that agreement to this day, and that's been a pretty consistent number for some time. One of the things we'll talk about soon, probably this month, is the next phase of that agreement and what portion the city may want to participate in future need. But to Ms. Ring's point, the critical ice season, you know, October through end of February, is maxed out. And so they do have need for other ice that they can't find at our ice center.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. And then, as a point of interest, the Blue Ox brought their team in tonight and gave them the big, revving them up for the season. Bunch of good-looking young men. They're all ready to go. All the billet families and the families were there, all excited. And they have their first preseason game coming up on the 9th. And then there's actual season openers the 23rd. And they're really excited to be in Coon Rapids, and we're really excited to have them because, as you say, it's a lot of entertainment for there, and they fill in a lot of those voids. And they bring in their own Blue Ox. It's out on the sidewalk. It's very cool. Mr. Stemwedel?
Mayor, Council, one other thing I wanted to underscore to Ms. Ring's described, sort of re-looking at the contracts this year. It's probably an understatement. She did a lot of work to really make these consistent across user groups, which puts us in a much better position moving forward, helps us make sure we're staying within some of the limits we have related to the financing of the building. And so she did a tremendous job kind of organizing all that, communicating to the user groups and making it all happen. So just wanted to mention that.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, well, we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 16 is an introduction only. Ms. Lensmeyer, would you like to hit any highlights on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members. Before you is a reintroduction of an ordinance amending the alcoholic beverage code. We introed this back in July and then discovered we had a few tweaks to make based on the interpretation of the law we worked out with the league and the Department of Alcohol and Gambling. And so we've got that before you. It was attached as a red line. Essentially, it's just tweaking the language of the code to match the new law and adding the small brewer off-sale license, 128 ounce. If you have any questions, I can answer those.
Okay. So Alloy can really rev up now their production, and we really could use a micro distillery in town.
We could.
All right, anybody have any questions for this? All right, then, in that case, we will consider, let me go back to this again. We will consider the ordinance amending chapter 5-200 alcoholic beverages introduced. Item 17 is to consider resolution 22-89 establishing the preliminary 2023 tax levy. Ms. Hanson, do you want to cover this? All right.
I will test this. I will gladly cover this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So for consideration for you this evening is setting the 2023 preliminary tax levy. The city is required to certify to the county a proposed property tax levy for the upcoming year by the end of this month. Staff is recommending a preliminary levy be set at $33,314,830 for taxes payable in 2023. Of this amount, $26.4 million is for the general fund. It's our main operating fund in the city and pays for most of the essential services that we provide. $4.9 million is for debt service, and $2 million is for various capital improvements and equipment that the city has a long-term plan to maintain. The proposed amount represents a 7.5% increase over the 2022 adopted levy and is a decrease from the 9.1% presented in the August 23rd work session. Following that work session, we identified additional reductions in expenditures, as well as utilizing available cash in the debt service funds to help write down that debt service levy for next year. The levy set this evening can be reduced before final certification in December, but not increased. The Truth in Taxation hearing is scheduled for December 6th. Anoka County will utilize the tax levy that the city sets and the proposed budget and create parcel-specific notices to property owners. These notices should arrive in mid-November and will include a new supplemental insert summarizing various levy and budget information for the county, the city, and the school district that a parcel resides in. The city's proposed budget is available on the website. So we encourage residents to go on and look at that. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Questions from Ms. Hanson? We really appreciate all of the work
Yeah.
that you all have put into putting this budget together, and we appreciate you sharpening the pencil a little bit more after our workshop. Mr. Stemwedel, what's your prediction on fiscal disparities? Do we have any long-term predictions on that? Because that's a pretty big chunk of money for us.
Mayor, Council, you know, the topic of fiscal disparities gets talked about at a legislative level every session. It's a very challenging thing to modify, given that across the metro, you know, everybody has sort of gotten comfortable, I guess, with where they're at, whether you're sort of a net recipient or paying into the pool overall. So I'd say it would be a very big challenge. I don't think there's anything on the immediate horizon that would affect that. It's a little bit different program, obviously, than we're experienced with local government aid, which has been kind of here and gone again, back again. So one of the challenging things with this budget, as council's aware, but I'll mention it for the sake of the public, is we're losing all of our local government aid, or scheduled to, for 2023, which is a difference of about $1 million. And so a large part of the pressure on the levy this year was making up for that, certainly making other adjustments to soften that blow, relying on some cash balances, making some other modifications and reductions to absorb that. But that was a pretty big factor in this. So I don't see that happening with fiscal disparities, just because that's a pretty complicated nut to crack. But it's not to say that that formula or that approach will never get looked at, because certainly if you're a city who's a net contributor, you're maybe interested in getting out of fiscal disparities. And you know, there are people who aren't comfortable with sort of the sharing of the wealth across the metropolitan area. But again, it's a challenging thing, I think, for the legislature to unwind at this point.
And I guess I was also curious, because we have increased our tax base a lot over the last several
Yes,
years.
yep.
And we have a lot of construction going on right
Yep.
now. And I would think at some point that's going to move the needle on
Yeah.
fiscal disparities.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, I think, you know, that's something to watch. Certainly, as we saw our net property value increase about 20% for pay 2023, although what you're seeing in the whole region is a pretty significant increase, and there are
Right.
communities, you think about the Woodbury's and Maple Groves, that are growing at a very rapid pace. And so while we're experiencing good growth, and that's helping our tax rate and it's helping other things, you know, there are those other communities that are outpacing us still, or have similar property value increases. Therefore, we're not gaining a lot relative to the metro region. I think somewhat, a little bit, but not enough to make a dramatic swing in that. So over time, though, you know, as we project out 5 or 10 years, you know, it could go one way or the other, I think.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Have any questions on on this? Somebody want to?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember
I'll make a
Geisler.
motion to adopt Resolution 22-89, establishing the preliminary tax levy for the city of Coon Rapids.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Carlson. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac?
appreciate everyone's work on this. There's no question about that. A lot of work goes into this thing. I mean, you start talking about this in the spring, and it's coming back for us, and we're all talking about what we want to do and how we're going to fund it all. So appreciate that. And I know there was actually even extra work over the last couple of weeks since our work session, where they came in at a much higher number than this. I was vocal at that meeting that I didn't want to see a levy increase to this extent. I understand some of the things that we're paying for, some big stuff, again, the fire station and some other things like that. We've got, you know, we bonded a high number this year at $23 million. But I still think that this is too high. I think there's things that we can strike from the budget and get a more, a less of a growth rate in our levy. I'm seeing, you know, I'm hearing rents are going up, food's going up, gas is going up, people's bills are going up. We would be adding to those increased bills with an increase of 7.5%. And I would just like to see that if this passes preliminarily at 7.5%, I don't think our work is done. I'd like to still look at other areas where we might be able to be a little bit more efficient with some of these tax dollars, keeping, you know, the inflation aspect in mind. You know, there's a lot of people where an extra $100 isn't a big deal, but there's others that, you know, it all adds up, chip by chip. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Well, and what we're passing tonight has been stated, is a not to exceed number. And if we can figure out a way to whittle it down, all right. We have a motion and a second establishing the preliminary tax levy for the city of Coon Rapids. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. We're up to the open mic public comment portion of the meeting. Is anybody here to address council for open mic? All right. We have 2 reports for previous open mics. The first one was Mr. Shawn Nelson, 2XXX 123rd Avenue. During the August 16th council meeting, he expressed concerns about a potential drug rehab center operating in I have to do the air quotes, drug rehab center operating in a nearby home, because there's quotes around it here. Staff has done some research and can report the following. The owner of the property holds a comprehensive home care license from the Minnesota Department of Health, and this license was issued in September 2021 and must be renewed this fall. While the specific scope of services are not known, generally these include things like daily functions, i.e. dressing, feeding, hygiene, daily reminders on medications and diet, and other tasks like shopping, housekeeping, and meal prep. It should be noted that this type of license is separate and distinct from a residential drug treatment facility, which is regulated by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. And staff has contacted MDH and requested additional information and clarification that the owner, We Care Home Healthcare Services, is in compliance with state regulations, and we are awaiting follow-up from them as of when this was put together. And a search of the MDH's database didn't reveal any complaints in the last 3 years about either the provider or this location. The city has issued a separate, I'm actually skipping a paragraph here, but I'll read it. In general, a state, I'm trying to figure out how to truncate that down a little bit. In general, a state licensed residential facility that serves 6 or fewer people is allowed by right under the city's zoning code in most residential districts. There are no public notice requirements. If a facility serves 7 to 16 people, the city requires a conditional use permit. This would trigger a public hearing and notice to properties within 350 feet. Staff has no information to suggest that the larger type of facility is operating at the property in question. And in addition, there is no evidence that the owner is operating a residential drug treatment facility. Staff also searched Minnesota Department of Human Services licensing records and found none for this address. The city has issued a separate rental license to the property owner, and the property appears to be in compliance with city ordinances, aside from a couple of property maintenance issues which were identified and addressed in 2021 and earlier this year. There have been a number of calls for service, police or medical, in the last few years. Staff has discussed the calls with CRPD, and nothing has risen to a level where revocation of the rental license is warranted. And this is an issue we will continue to monitor going forward, as we do with all rental licenses. And this report is provided for informational purposes, and a copy will be provided to Mr. Nelson. The next item on our agenda is item 19, and that is a response to open mic comments from Richard Johnson. And then there's the address is on here is wrong. We've got, on here it says 12940. It's actually 10940 Crooked Lake Boulevard. And this is a follow-up to his open mic comments regarding River North Senior Apartments. And during the open mic portion of the August 16th City Council meeting, Mr. Johnson, who is a resident of the River North Senior Apartments, expressed concern about proposed rent increases at the complex. The property is owned and managed by Plymouth-based Dominium, which was also the original developer of the project. Mr. Johnson asked if the city could do something to address rent increases at the complex. The property is, Staff is aware that many tenants in the building share similar concerns, and a listening session was held earlier this summer at the building. In the short term, there's little the city can do to address the proposed rent increases at River North or any other property for that matter. Both Minneapolis and St. Paul have enacted ordinances that would establish limits on annual rent increases, although neither ordinance has been implemented at this point, and both of those, I would point out, were passed by referendum not by just their city council. It would probably be advisable to monitor these efforts and assess how successful such programs might be, especially in light of potential legal challenges. In the long term, the city can look at incorporating rent caps on affordable housing projects, and there's a big explanation in here, the kind of the pros and cons of that. And with regard to Dominium, it is staff's understanding that the company is operating within the rules of low-income housing tax credit program, which is a federal program administered at the state level. A key driver of the 2022 rent increases is the fact that qualifying incomes changed substantially this year, and every year the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development updates area median income, and the figures for 2022 are based on the 2019 American Community Survey, which was completed pre-pandemic. The national AMI increased by 8% in 2022. And then we've got we have an attached table showing the income and rent limit data for the Twin Cities region from 2019 to 2022. Locally, AMI for the 7-county Twin City region figures increased by 12.7%, with income and rent limits for projects increasing by a slightly lesser amount of 11.8%. A single person with an income close to the eligibility limit, $49,320, and renting a one-bedroom apartment, $1,320 max allowed, is paying about 32% of their income toward rent. Wow, we've got a lot of information in this one. Another tenant living in the same building with an income of $33,320 would pay nearly 46% of the rent income toward rent for the same apartment, and the net impact of these rent increases is affecting those with lower incomes, of course. And Councilmember Rayrower, you had something you wanted to add to this open mic comment?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to thank Richard for coming and sharing his concerns with us and those of other residents. We did discuss this as a council at our last work session, and it's clear we care about our residents and we're always interested in helping them where and when as we can. I'd like to ensure developers in the city are putting our community and its residents as a top priority, and I will consider future developers of multi-unit housing and hope for a collaborative community partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, those are our reports on previous open mics, and we are on to other business.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Carlson.
I'd like to share an email that I received from longtime resident Milo Hartman. A lot of people know Milo. He's been involved in so many different projects in Coon Rapids. He's just been a wonderful volunteer. He had many, many years as a softball coach, and a lot of us know him through his work on the Public Safety Commission and Night to Unite, and I was lucky enough to meet him through his efforts leading the Coon Rapids Parkinson Support Group. But Milo had sent me this email, and he had asked that I share it at a council meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't here a couple of weeks ago, but I'd like to share it now. So this is from Milo. On Thursday night, August 4th, 2022, at 10 p.m., I suffered a heart attack in my Coon Rapids home. Soon after calling 911, the firemen arrived, and after giving me aspirin and several nitro on the way to Mercy Hospital, I had a procedure that night for 200% clogged arteries and 2 more stents to follow in 1 month. Due to the quick action on the firemen's part, they saved my life. I am most appreciative for their efforts. Thank you. Milo, fortunately, is doing really well, and he's back at it. And he just, he was so appreciative of the firefighters' work, and what a great time to show our appreciation for all of our emergency responders, police, fire, EMS. We are just blessed with this great 24/7 service to our residents. And I know Milo is certainly very appreciative of their efforts.
That's awesome. That's great to hear, too. Milo's a great guy. And I always tell folks, if you're going to have a heart event, you really want to be in Coon Rapids. The fire department's going to be there before anybody else, or one of our police department, and they're going to respond. And you are really close to one of the greatest heart centers in the Midwest. So, yeah, we've got a lot going on here. It's a great city. Yeah, it's good. Other business. Councilmember Geisler.
I have one item, and I can maybe pitch over to Ms. Ring. Watch your news, in your mail for the newsletter, the Coon Rapids Fall newsletter. Should it be in your mailbox? I think I got mine this last week. It is a wealth of information. Ms. Ring's team puts it together. It tells you pretty much anything that you ever would want to know about the city and where to get help or information. So please don't throw it away and take the time to read it. It's a wonderful piece, and I appreciate Ms. Ring and her team that put that together for our residents.
And if they were looking at that, they would see right on the front that we have the Love My Pet Fair coming up September 17th down at the Riverview Park. Is it? I'm not going to say the time. You say the time.
Sure, Mayor and Council. It's from 10 to 1:30. We have a jam-packed day. Bring the family out. It's going to be so much fun. There's entertainment for kids. There's games. It's a very pet-friendly event. We welcome dogs on leashes. Occasionally you get an iguana or occasionally a cat, but it's a very dog-heavy event. And there's also chalk art. There's the ever-popular pet costume contest. The owners also get involved. It's really a lot of fun. Our staff is super excited. It should be a great event coming up. And it's free. It's just a great opportunity to come out. So please wish for wonderful weather. It makes the event a lot nicer for us.
And the one thing that you didn't say, though, other than being on a leash, bring your well-behaved
You're right.
pet. It's right on the flyer.
Well-behaved.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which honestly, there are just sometimes, up to 100 or 200 dogs. We've never had an issue. Very well-behaved pets. And dog owners like to congregate and talk and share stories about their dogs. So yes, bring them down. Well-behaved and leashed.
Thank you. Other business to come before council.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Hernandez Jr.
Just want to update members of council and city staff. We had our benefit for Rocchiati on August 28th at CR Billiards, and then I'm just happy to say that we were able to raise just under $23,000 for Rocky and his family. And another thank you to Jerry Johnson and his staff and the great job that they did and all the volunteers that helped out. The community came out and supported Rocky and his family, and it was a great event. And man, there's no community like a Coon Rapids community that came out. Councilmember Pat Carlson showed up and supported as well, and it was just a great event, and it was very humbling experience. So just wanted to update everybody on that. It was an awesome day. So.
And Jerry Johnson and CR Billiards has been there for so many groups and so many fundraisers. And I think this past spring, I think he had gone over $2 million raised down there doing benefits.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure that was the mark that he crossed over then.
Yes.
All right. Any other business to come before council? Are farmers markets still going on? Wednesdays?
Yes, it is, till mid-October.
Perfect. All right.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Johnson.
I'd just like to give a shout out to the Coon Rapids Police Department for an event or an incident, if you will, that happened this last week. And I don't like bringing it up too much because, the topic of crime and things that happen in the community is sometimes a tough thing to talk about. But we really have a special police department in the city of Coon Rapids. And the reason I'm bringing this up is there was an incident back last week at the Old Navy store where somebody attempted to shoplift, and that resulted in a flea, and that resulted in property damage, and that resulted in a carjacking, and the like. Now, here's how Coon Rapids responded to it, though. We have a substation in the Riverdale area, and our community-oriented policing and problem-solving officers were in the area, and it's because of that foresight to have a substation there and having officers that are watching the neighborhood and watching the businesses that are there that we were able to respond so effectively. But it's more than that. We have officers here in Coon Rapids who are PIT certified, and that's Pursuit Intervention Technique certified, and that means that they are trained as to how to attempt to safely end a fleeing or pursuit when it happens. Not every community has PIT-certified officers, and so that's another good thing. And as a result of that, an individual who had several dozen warrants in several states was arrested here in Coon Rapids, brought into custody, and is now facing several felony charges here in Anoka County. Frankly, in other communities, that person may have gotten away because of their boldness within which they undertake these actions. And it's my understanding, and maybe Chief Stankey can just address this just very briefly, that the person expressed even a little bit of surprise that Coon Rapids stepped forward and ended the pursuit when it ended the fleeing when it happened. I think it's huge, and this has been a little over the media, that we send the message to would-be criminals. Not that they're going to be watching cable access TV right now.
Oh, I'm sure they're riveted, right glued to the set.
but that we send the message through our actions and through our ideas and having these kinds of things and tools in place, that this is just not a community where this is going to happen. And so to all the officers that were involved and to the follow-up that was done, thank you very much.
Anything you want to add to that, Chief Stankey?
Well, Councilmember Johnson, I guess first of all, it's humbling to hear this from you, and thank you very much for acknowledging our team. You and I both agree that I think we have some of the best officers in the business here working for Coon Rapids, and they truly care about the community, and they care about doing what's right, and they care about putting the right people away and making good choices. And I was proud of the officers that day. They wanted to send a message to the criminal community that this is not the place to come and commit crimes, and that's what they did. And again, thank you for mentioning it. I'll pass it on to the officers, your appreciation for their hard work and their efforts. And to follow up on what the perpetrator's comment was, he thought that police officers were supposed to stop chasing him when he drove in that manner. And just the crazy actions that he took behind the wheel that day. And he couldn't figure out why the Coon Rapids police officers just kept coming at him. I guess he didn't quite comprehend why we wanted to catch him so bad. And the question was, well, you came to our community and committed a serious crime and you endangered lives. And when you do that here, we're going to do what we can to put you away. So
now he knows.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And he has to pass that along because they don't watch the meeting either.
Right.
Yeah.
Social media.
Well, they're working.
They were here, but they left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Any other business to come before council this evening?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Carlson to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.